There wasn't much about 2015 that didn't completely suck. My marriage was falling apart to pieces, my spouse had grown cold and indifferent, and our son hadn't been diagnosed with autism yet. He was still a toddler, but we knew there was something off about him. Something was wrong. By summer, I'd moved my belongings into the Quest quarters, and that became my bedroom. It was the beginning of the end, with the two of us in bitter denial, or possibly waiting for the other to end it first. At 5 a.m., my alarm got me up for work every weekday morning, and I spent most wakeful moments trying to find a way out of a dump truck driving and construction. My spouse was less than supportive. I didn't have the funds to pay for college, and I was too busy to learn a new whole trade or skill. Once in a while, I've come up with a cool sketch or painting. Sometimes I'd write a poem that people appreciated, but I didn't have the talent or skill to replace the earnings of my day job. So every weekday, it was a 10 to 12 hour shift of double clutching at a tandem axle Mac. I'd haul a flatbed trailer with heavy equipment for paying a crew to get a mortgage and bills paid. The second Friday of June didn't seem any different from any other weekday. It was a payday. I planned on spending the time with my little one, putting him to bed and getting into a cheap bottle of whiskey before passing out in the guest bedroom. For the time being, I was still on the clock and getting ready for my last run. My foreman, Mike, asked me a special favor to take an overloaded flatbed a few miles down the road. Normally, I would have said no, but I liked Mike. I didn't want to argue, and I just wanted to wrap up the day. And this is the start of my weekend. A worst case scenario, I thought it was an overloaded fine from a DOT officer. The crew loaded a paver, a skid steer, and a roller on the flatbed trailer designed to hold 2/3 of the combined weight of all that equipment. Everything was already chained down. I told the guys I'd see them in the yard after I hooked up to the trailer. I eased off the clutch and into first gear. I could feel the Mack truck struggling to pull the overloaded flatbed trailer. I got to my first traffic light without demolishing the dump truck stopped ahead of me, only because I began to downshift and brake well ahead of time. I realized my seatbelt was off, and I tried to put it back on, but it wouldn't budge. The light turned green, the sky opened up, and the torrential downpour bunch of rain all on everything in sight. I started driving, but kept the rig 10 miles per hour below the posted speed limit, convinced that it would keep me safe. I passed the quarry on the left and began my descent down a steep grande on the way to my stop. I got part of the way down the ominous hill and traffic was stopped ahead in the distance. I gently applied the brakes, but the truck tires started skidding on the wet road. The trailer began to jackknife over the double yellow lines into oncoming motorists. I eased off the brakes and regained control over the trailer and replied them. The same thing happened, all the while I'm still moving towards stopped traffic going 30 miles an hour downhill with a combined vehicle weight easily exceeding 60,000 pounds. The old country road had one lane headed downhill, one lane headed uphill, no shoulders and nothing but trees on either side. As a last-ditch effort, I pulled the parking brake and started stabbing at the brake pedal. Crashing a commercial truck is almost always fatal for the driver. Not having a working seatbelt, I was really helping my odds. The cars stopped ahead and were now less than 2 tractor trailers length away, and I couldn't stop the truck. I thought about my wife. I remembered being in love with her before we started hating each other. I thought about my son. I thought about the people who stopped ahead and their families. I thought about how much it was going to suck dying in a dump without much. It was going to suck without dying in a dump truck full of colliding into trees on the side of the road. The collision was inevitable. There was no way in hell I was going to allow innocent motorists to get killed. My last run had turned into a suicide mission. Being a non-religious heathen, I thought perchance there may be something close by, some ghost that watches over truckers and bikers, some spirit perhaps, inhabiting those woods. I called out to it, "Make it quick." That was my first and final prayer to whatever spirit that inhabits that forest. I didn't see any freaking way possible I'd survive this. What I'd do next, and what I didn't want to linger in agony. Following the crash, I just wanted the death to be swift. I turned the steering wheel away from traffic and into the woods. As soon as my front wheels left the pavement, the bumpy wooded terrain shook me violently, throwing me into a world of hurt like I've never known. As an at-risk teen, I'd been jumped, hit with the chains and bats. I'd been beaten mercilessly by my bastard of a father as a child. Nothing I'd experienced could have prepared me for this beating. The inside of that truck put on every inch of my body. The trailer snapped off and headed into another portion of the woods. The truck roared into the forest with me as its hostage, mowing down the vegetation, leaving hunks of metal all about as the trees branches of the forest fought back against this hostile diesel-powered invasion. I gripped the wheel for my dear life while smacking all the console, the control panel, the shifter, and feeling every abrasive texture grind away at my flesh. The truck hit the big bump that sent me head first into the ceiling. Blood went everywhere. Then it hit a dip and skidded to a violent stop. A terrible pressure pushed into my chest. I thought I was having a heart attack. Somehow I didn't go flying through the glass as a horrifying ordeal came into an abrupt halt. As quickly as the crash ended, so did that awful blow in my chest. I excited the smoldering wreck that was once a sturdy Mack truck. I covered in blood. I had what seemed like a sheet of plastic, a grocery bag perhaps, stuck to my head. It wasn't even a grocery bag hanging off my head. I didn't realize at the moment that was my scalp being practically degolved. It peeled right off my noggin. My skull exposed and blood pouring all over me. It was hanging off the side of my head. I imagined being like a peel hanging off the side of a piece of a fruit. It must have been what happened when I hit the ceiling of the truck's interior. What hurt more than anything in that moment was my chest. It couldn't even have been steering wheel. It wasn't a heart attack. I didn't know what the kung was. Ever living frick out of me. I stirred him. I was glad I was still alive. Only moments later, I was getting put into a collar, strapped to a black board, and loaded into an ambulance by paramedics. My Blitz t-shirt, my favorite freaking punk rock shirt, was blood-soaked and sheared off me by the medics. They took my vitals and asked questions meant to gauge my level of consciousness. Then for a moment or two I fell silent. Am I gonna make it? I joked as I turned my head to see both medics staring at my scrotum. My mouth agaped and my eyes bugged out in bewilderment. After a second, they assured me everything would be fine and continued with routine measures during medical transport. I thought about the day's events at the hospital. I got all doped by the medics, got my scalp stapled and bandaged, and got admitted to my room. I thought about my terrible judgment, my last-minute decision, the dying man's prayer, and the blow to the chest while crashing and somehow not flying through the windshield. I thought about it all in my hospital room. I stood bare-chested before a miner, gazing at my bruise. Across my chest, spanning about 12 inches in length, was a deep purple mark in the shape of a giant ghastly hand. I hope you guys liked this video because, it's kind of new for me. I'm not very, good at making spooky voices. I didn't expect that ending, and, this story is a creepypasta. It was written by Cesar Nunez. Credit to him for making this video. Credit to him for writing this story, and thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Yay. My alarm got me up for work every weekday morning, and I spent most weekday morning, and I messed up.